Hello humans, and welcome to another episode of Gen X Gamer. Today we're going to go down memory lane for yours truly, that's right. Animes of the 80s. Not only that, it's the golden age of anime. From Mexico in the 80s, that's what was my influence back in the day. First, let's hit you with the disclaimer. This show is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello humans, and welcome to another episode of Gen X Gamer. Thank you for being here, conversationalists all across the fruited plains of America and across the world, wherever you're listening to me. Today I wanted to take you back down memory lane. Believe it or not, guys, my love of animes, the stuff that I like watching, whether it's anime of, in video games or comic books or anything like that, began when I was a kid. And for Generation X, many of us, that means the 80s. And in the 80s, let me tell you, there was a lot of anime, specifically in Mexico. Right? Let me show you a picture here of what I'm talking about. Look at that. Mexico's golden age of anime. The 80s, I'm going to take a look back, right? Because these are many of the first animes that I saw. And believe it or not, there was plenty of them, right? In Mexico, and from Mexico they're distributed throughout Latin America. Especially at that time, Mexico's infrastructure was the only one that could support this, right? Bringing these animes, they had the actors, they had the studios. At that time, there was only really two countries that produced media en masse that other countries would consume, and it really was Mexico, and to a very secondary would be Venezuela around the time. That's what I remember. Right, Spain had their thing, but not as much, right? Not as much as influence here in the Americas, in Latin America specifically. Not anywhere as near as Mexico did. Well, back in the 80s, let me tell you, back in the 80s, what happened is that importing anime was really cheap. It was really cheap, and Mexican studios could do it, and it's easier to produce than producing your own cartoons. You would just bring them and dub them. And the good thing is that, for them, at the time, is that many of these animes had the same values, same type of family values as Latin America did, so it was pretty easy to convert them over. If you're looking at the screen now, there's a great article. I'm going to put links down below, guys. These are in Spanish, but just to give you a feel of what it was. One of my most beloved, right, and I still have that figure on my desk at work, is Massinger C, right? I think they called it Transer C over here, and I'm paraphrasing here. And there was one called Candy, which is basically like a soap opera, really, and it was very similar to a novella. The same with Heidi, right? And you see Dragon Ball Z and others here, and there was just so many, so many that I can remember watching, and I started watching them even earlier. Because when I left here, I would watch things like Astro Boy. It was still black and white. Excuse me. And I remember before I came, I was watching La Batalla de los Planetas, right? It's Gotcha Man, I think they call it. Battle of the Planets. And many, many more, guys. Those were the influences back then. I remember this one here, this one that you see in the picture here. This website is from Peru. I'm just trying to show you how wide this distribution was in Latin America, and why you see so many Gen Xers of Hispanic descent, right? Latinos, right? No Latinx, guys. Don't use that. We actually hate that. That was invented by somebody at some woke place here in the U.S. There's no such thing. Spanish is a gendered language. Do your Hispanic friends a favor, especially if they're older. Don't say Latinx. For Latinos, this is what we grew up with. Sawamura El Campeón was one of my favorites. Absolutely. He was like a karate master that learned kickboxing, and it was all his trajectory, just kicking ass right after he learned all these moves. And every opponent would be different. And he was going throughout, different places and trying to, knock people out. And he had different, and every fighter had their own style, their own kickboxing methods. It was really cool. There were really great animes, and you'll see a lot of top tens. For example, there's so many. Heidi was made in 1974. Messenger Z, which is Transfer C for you guys, made in 1972. I was watching it in 1980. Right, so a lot of these were from the 70s, some even earlier from the 60s. I was watching Ultraman. I was fortunate enough, right, in this private school that I used to go to, all my friends were different nationalities, right? We're different nationalities, and we all went to the same school. And the only thing that we have in common is that we could communicate in English, right? Even though, some of us, like my group, right? Imagine this. A kid from Japan, right, in a foreign country, a kid from Brazil in a foreign country, me, right, that mostly spoke English when I got there, because when I got there I was like 5 years old, and I already learned English, and I had to relearn it, when I came back, and trying to speak Spanish, right? And when you speak Spanish in another country, when it's not your first language, you sound funny. So it was like this group of little nerds, right? But we all loved superheroes. We all loved anime. And our friend from Japan, he would get these magazines, right, with thick magazines that you could order and read about comic books. It was all in Japanese, of course, right? And read about all these animes. And it was awesome. We just sit there in the soccer field after playing soccer and just, read this amongst all of us. It was really, really cool. But anyway, guys, I just wanted to tell you where that love comes from, and really started to end around the 90s when you had this movement where they started trying to censor things for, religious reasons and what have you, and political too, but mostly religious. But it was great, man. Growing up in the 80s with these, and then coming back to the US and seeing how secluded anime people were is a completely different experience than I was experiencing in Latin America. Because over there it was popular. Everybody loved it. It was cool. It was cool to like anime. We were watching these shows and we talk about them at school. But here it was like you couldn't like it. It wasn't cool to like anime back in the day, believe it or not. But yeah, guys, there was a golden age of anime for Gen Xers in Latin America, and it was a golden age, really, that started in Mexico because they produced a lot of this content. That's just something to give you pause to think about, and the reason why there's so many anime fans in Latin America and here in the U.S. of Hispanic descent. Now you know. All right, guys, I will catch you on the next one. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking my videos. I really do appreciate it. And I will catch you on the next one. Take care.